Mr. President.
The Majority Leader is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, later today we will hold a vote on the nomination of Scott Bessent to be Treasury Secretary. An example of the American dream in action, Mr. Bessent rose from challenging economic circumstances to a career in the world of finance. And he brings a wealth of private sector experience in the economy and markets to his new role, as well as a concern for the needs of working Americans. Mr. President, during President Trump's first administration, we passed major tax relief legislation. The Tax Cuts and Jobs Act reformed our nation's outdated tax code, lowered tax rates across the board, nearly doubled the standard deduction, doubled the child tax credit, and enacted pro-growth policies for American businesses of all sizes. As a result, the economy took off, and our nation became more competitive. Household incomes increased, and the employment rate hit its lowest level in 50 years. Now, however, a lot of that tax relief is close to expiring. And without action, American families and businesses will face a staggering $4 trillion tax hike next year. And at the top of the Republican agenda is extending that tax relief to help our economy and the American people thrive. I deeply appreciate the fact that Mr. Bessent shares that commitment, and I'm looking forward to working with him on extending the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. I'm also looking forward to working with him to help ensure that American businesses, large and small, remain competitive in the global economy. Over the last 4 years, we've witnessed the Biden administration's embrace the Biden administration embrace the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development and negotiate with nations around the world on a Pillar 2 global minimum tax regime. All, I might add, without consulting Congress, and I would argue without fully appreciating the damage to the United States' own tax base and our ability to set tax policy for U.S. multinational firms. The Tax Cuts and Jobs Act helped create an environment where American businesses could thrive on the global stage. And I'm committed to working with Mr. Bessent and the Trump administration to continue to protect American businesses and ensure that we do not enter into agreements that put U.S. businesses at a disadvantage next to their foreign counterparts. Mr. President, this afternoon we will also be voting to invoke cloture on the nomination of Sean Duffy to be Secretary of Transportation. Mr. Duffy brings valuable experience that will help him in managing our nation's sprawling transportation system, and he has some important work ahead of him. In recent years, there have been a number of challenges in the transportation sector. We've seen serious safety concerns affect air travel. Issues at our ports have led to supply chain challenges. A pilot shortage has resulted in reduced air service in parts of the country. And all the while, the Biden administration seemed to be focused on forcing Americans into electric vehicles and forcing progressive ideology into transportation policy. Mr. President, the American people expect to have a safe and efficient transportation system, and that's the top priority of the Transportation Department. And it's what Sean Duffy is focused on. As a 5-term congressman and a co-chair of the Great Lakes Task Force, Mr. Duffy worked with Republicans and Democrats in the House and the Senate on a number of infrastructure projects, including the replacement of a decades-old structurally deficient bridge connecting Wisconsin and Minnesota and upgrading the Sioux locks. Our colleague, Senator Baldwin, has called Mr. Duffy, and I quote, the right person for this job, and he earned a unanimous bipartisan vote out of the Commerce Committee last week. Mr. President, as Mr. Duffy mentioned during his confirmation hearing, he and his wife, Rachel, have 9 children. And I'm not the first to observe that the logistics of moving the Duffy clan is by itself preparation for this job. But more seriously, Mr. President, as a father and the parent of new drivers, transportation safety is personal to Mr. Duffy. And as a resident of a rural state myself, I appreciate that coming from rural Wisconsin, he knows the infrastructure needs in rural parts of the country are just as important as those anywhere else. Mr. President, Sean Duffy will bring valuable experience and knowledge to the Transportation Department, and he has a proven track record of working with Republicans and Democrats to deliver good infrastructure for the people we all serve. I look forward to working with him in this new role. And I look forward to confirming both Mr. Besant and Mr. Duffy in the very near future. Mr. President, I yield the floor, and I suggest the absence of a quorum.
The clerk will call the roll.